Welcome to Direct Approach with Wayne Moorehead, a new podcast brought to you by Direct Selling News. If you're a direct selling executive looking to next level your strategy, marketing, and brand, this is the podcast for you. Host Wayne Moorehead, a DSU audience favorite, interviews some of the leading marketers and innovators in direct selling to help your marketing and branding teams motivate the field, inspire customers, and further your brand's reach and impact. In today's episode, Wayne is joined by Brian Underwood, co-founder and CEO of Prüvit. Brian is a successful entrepreneur, thought leader, international speaker, and philanthropist. He's also the host of a top-rated business podcast, Be You with Be You. Wayne and Brian will share their thoughts on community-based marketing and how this approach lets you build a genuine and lasting emotional connection with your customers. And you really don't want to miss Brian's key tips on how to organically become a direct selling category frontrunner. And here's a sneak peek. It does not involve adding product SKUs or chasing the latest trends. Now, a word from our sponsor.
Your brand can live in the hearts and minds of all kinds of people in many places. Today's marketplace is driven by storytelling and personal connections made with brands like yours. Now Tech provides you the future of marketing through a beautifully designed video and e-commerce suite. Now's video commerce technology gives your customers a truly seamless buying experience, which increases your cart value and boosts sales. Did you know? Viewers retain 95% of a video's message. 96% of shoppers rely on product videos when making a buying decision. 84% of people say they've been convinced to buy after watching a brand's video presentation. A video commerce customer reported a 358% increase in customer acquisition and 230% revenue growth. Storytelling and personal connections have always been at the heart of successful direct selling companies. Our video technology gives your brand the opportunity to influence, teach, and inspire the world. Now Tech, proven technology from a trusted partner with 35 years of experience. Let's talk 310-428-9936 or email us at info@now-tech.com.
Time to dive in. Here's your host, Wayne Moorehead, and today's guest, Brian Underwood, co-founder and CEO of Prüvit.
Hey everybody, and welcome to DSN's Direct Approach podcast. Very excited for our guest today. He has created one of the most disruptive and successful companies to come along in the channel in a very long time. And that is Brian Underwood, co-founder and CEO of Prüvit. Brian, welcome to Direct Approach.
Hey, it's great to be on. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Really appreciate you taking the time. Again, really excited to talk to you. You've had a big impact, on the channel with kind of how you think about things differently and how you approached things with Prüvit. So I'd love just to start off to hear a little bit more about you and your path that led you into direct selling and ultimately into founding Prüvit.
Oh man, I don't know if we have enough time to go through the whole history. I'll give you a few of the
just
highlights.
The highlights.
I'll give you some of the highlights. And I think it's important, I found direct sales and network marketing. I didn't know anything about it. I was a college student, 20 years old. Saw my high school basketball coach that coached me on an all-star team one summer go from coaching to becoming a millionaire with a telecommunications company in the early 90s. And he came in and approached my dad because he wanted to get a professional. My dad was a CPA. He wanted to get him involved. And when he did that, I was just eavesdropping on the presentation, and he left. And I told my dad, I was like, I want to do that. I want to make some money. And my dad at the time thought, oh, that'd be great. I'll call him back here. Because my dad was thinking, yeah, let's get you out there in the summer, when you're home from school, get some no's, let you see what the real business is all about. And, I just took it serious. I wasn't sure what traditional or non-traditional business was at the time. I was just hungry and ready to make money. And that was my first experience, which was an incredible experience. I always say now that if I knew what I knew now back then, I would have grown or accelerated a lot quicker. But I think that's always part of our journey and process. And that company was founded right there in Dallas, Texas. It was Excel Telecommunications, which I know everyone's probably heard their story. So that was kind of my base of this industry. And I stayed in it for my 20s. I was a promoter and a distributor. And I was chasing money. I think that's what a lot of times people get in for, this lure of money. And it's a great platform for the average person. I think the best platform to knock a financial home run still to this day. But more so, I think that it's the experience and education. If you can partner with a good company, that it can give you the depth of personal development. And in my 20s, I kept chasing it, and I'd make a little bit and I'd lose a little bit, and money kind of would elude me. And I talk about this a lot because I think it's really important. I really had a defining moment, right when I was about to turn 30 years old. And that defining moment really still carries a lot of fuel and inspiration for me to this day. And that defining moment was, I was kind of going through the motions. I played basketball through college and had a background in athletics. And so motivation and inspiration and winning and grit and teamwork, that was always part of my DNA. And so I did not realize that sometimes my success was an unconscious competence that I had gone through since I was 8 years old, right? Because I thought that that's, everybody had that. And to make a long story really short, I had someone come up to me after a presentation I did, and they said, "Hey, I've never had anyone talk to me like that, and I just want to thank you. And can I talk to you for a few minutes?" And at that time, they pulled me to the side, and it was a girl that was about my age in her late 20s. And she was telling me how she was kind of browbeat her entire life, and how, her parents told her she would never amount to anything. And just really, really, it hit me like a gut punch. And I thought to myself, what are you doing? Because it was really one of the very first times that I realized the privilege that I had grown up with, and that was an exception to the rule in the world. And that's when it started making me realize, why am I doing, direct sales? Why am I doing this? Like, what is it really? And the thing that I kept coming back to is, when I felt the best and the most alive was when you knew, or you got that validation from other people that it was shifting their lives, that they had hope, that they had excitement. And I think that's really what our industry has been founded off of. And so during that time, it was really a divine shift for me, for saying, that's why I do what I do. That's why I've grown where I've been planted when I was 20 years old. And my goal has always been, as it fast forwards, I didn't get on the ownership side of the business because of my ego or because I wanted to. It was kind of circumstance. I had a couple companies that went out of business, and you get your hopes on the shelf, and then things don't work out the way that they're planned, and you look for reasons to blame. And business is business. There's a lot of companies in the last year, all across the world, that's gone out of business, and that the fundamentals of business are the same in any industry. And so at that time, I was able to meet someone that's become a close friend and a mentor. And I had a little bit of imposter syndrome. I had a little bit of like, well, what would I know about, running a business? But at the same time, I wanted to make sure that I didn't have the wool pulled over my eyes. Like, as a person and as a distributor, I'm a teammate, right? So like, just tell me the good, the bad, the ugly, and I'll run through a brick wall for you, but don't spin me. Don't give me lip service. Be real with me. And I think that the world needs more of that. And he just said, listen, why don't you just do your own? The only way you're going to be happy is if you know exactly what's going on behind the scenes. And he said, I can do the behind the scenes. You do what you do great in front of this, in front, like bringing in the business and the marketing and the training. And at the time, I was like, okay, that sounds good. So it gave me courage to step out. And so from that time, my goal has always been really what I'm so passionate about in our industry is this platform that helps so many people that you never hear their stories. They might not ever make money or get rich with a company, but literally they are able to apply, and it gives them courage and hope. It gives them a different model of the world. And so when I started in the 90s, if 3 out of 10 people had done network marketing, you were lucky, right? So you'd spend half your time drawing on a whiteboard circles to help people understand what the model was about. Today, 10 out of 10 people have heard of it or they've been involved. If they say they haven't, they would lie about anything, right? Probably 8 of them will admit it, but now you have a different dynamic in the market. You have different experiences that different people have had. So if you have 8 people that have experienced it, 4 people will love the industry, 4 people will not. Why don't they like it or why did they love it? It's all associated with an experience they've had. So my goal and my perspective, a way to look at it is, when we started Prüvit, the deep rooted vision and mission, or if you want to say the goal, was bigger than just a brand in the industry. It was, how do we create a transcending brand that we can deliver value that can dispel the 4 people, the 50% of people that have a bad experience? How can we shift that? And the only way to shift it is to maybe give them some different perspectives, some different nomenclature. Don't use trigger words. Don't use same patterns that might have existed for 30 years that haven't been broken. But the fundamentals of our business are the same. It's just, and so that's what, really has inspired me and is still kind of my North Star to this day, is really understanding the work that everyone in our industry is doing if they're a good company. And some people are disillusioned. They think it's all about the money, and you got to make a profit if you're going to be in business and stay in business. I understand that. However, I do think our industry and our channel is so much bigger than that, that if we can focus on, these are real people, treat them like they're putting their hopes and dreams and belief and faith, faith is being certain of what they hope for, on the line with a company. And, the principles of that company should be congruent to understanding that. And that's kind of my North Star, is never lose sight of that and realize that, regardless if someone makes a ton of money with us or little money with us, we have the ability to create a lasting impact in the world based on, what we can bring to them outside of just product and money. And because that's what was brought to me when I first started. I really believe that was that is the reason our industry has stuck around, all the way back to some of the very first companies that really broke through in North America. They focused on building people, and it was people's only shot to go out and to achieve financial success, right? It was their only platform, but they had to learn all the mindset and fundamentals that maybe other people were privileged enough to inherit, through family or through other practices. So that's kind of my short story. And there's a lot of little stories in between that 28-year run.
No, that's amazing. And I'm always just blown away by how those early experiences with direct selling have such a lasting and powerful impact on so many of the founders, so many of the associates and distributors that operate within the channel. They get exposed to it early, and it just fuels them throughout their career. So you touched on a couple of things I want to kind of unpack a little bit. So when you set out to create Prüvit, you did it with the intent of doing things differently, kind of flipping some of maybe, the old stereotypes, or, some of the reasons that people, that don't know the industry well can be skeptical of the channel and of direct selling. As you set out to do things differently, were you trying to intentionally make an impact on the Prüvit world or the channel at large? Why, what motivated you to do things so differently instead of just following the template, that so many other companies have done?
No, that's a great question. And when my first reaction is, my goal isn't to just impact the Prüvit world or the channel, it's the outside world. And that's, it's thinking bigger than just this specific channel, because business is business is business. And I think sometimes direct selling or network marketing gets pigeonholed into one of those things. But the reality of it is, it's big business. And I think that taking on, a philosophy of doing what's working in the marketplace today, every owner has to. That to me is a responsibility they have for not only their company, our channel, but business at large. And I think for sometimes it's like you said, people run these templates, right, of what's worked. In today's business world, and we're in business, it changes so fast now. What worked 5 years ago does not work today, even in our channel. I'm just telling you, that's why there's a lot of recirculation of the same, if you can't preach to the choir, who can you preach to, right? So people, which I think has hurt our industry a little bit, they go try to poach leaders from other companies, so to speak. I mean, that's kind of an elephant in the room, but that's because they think, well, if I can get them, they can help build this. But I think differently. I think that if you have something great and you have value to offer to the world, there's plenty of people that want an opportunity. But if they feel like it's this niche market, or it's this nomenclature and all these, like this secret society, like it could intimidate or repel someone that's never been in our industry for that first experience. And I think that first experience isn't something, I think it's everything, right? And we don't do it perfect, but I have a quote, in our office that comes up every day. And I just believe in the art of innovation. And I think some people complicate innovation, but for innovation for me is a very simple term. And it really means delivering value to other people in the world that they might not have had before. So it can come into a lot of different means and mediums. And so the quote is, to be a true innovator, you have to focus on the business that you're in right now, right? And that's where some of us, I believe, including myself, I'm constantly pushing myself to not get stuck in the business I'm in. Because there's two businesses that are always happening. It's the business that you're in, and here's the end of the quote, and the business that you're becoming. And if you have to focus on them both simultaneously. And so if you're rigid or you're using a template, how can you keep up with TikTok when it pops on the market, right? And you have maybe philosophies that don't allow, you see what I mean? Like it has to be integratable.
Yeah, totally.
And so the quote ends with saying, focus on the business that you're in and the business that you're becoming. And that way you never have to pivot because you're constantly innovating. You're constantly looking to deliver here, but to bring value in the future. And I really think of giants and companies within our channel and outside of our channel that have done that, or that have built something to last. For most part, they've all done a great job at following that philosophy. And so that's really that's our philosophy. That I'm not going to say it's easy. But it's something that we really build the muscle on pushing ourselves. Don't be afraid to break what is working, because eventually that won't work, right? It's the law of familiarity, or the market passes you by. And so I would say this, that my goal has always been to create a transcending brand that doesn't get pigeonholed or labeled, but people see it as a brand. They don't define it. They see it for what it is. If that makes sense at all.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
And hopefully we can do some really good things. I'm not the most creative person in the world. I have my share, but I'm very aware of watching what other great people are doing and adopting that, and then reinforcing it with our style, or our heartbeat and our culture. And I think that's so important. I think that there's so much value we can all learn from each other within the channel too, that it's great to be competitive and have that competitive spirit. Larry Bird wouldn't be Larry Bird without Magic Johnson. However, we also have to honor each other for the betterment of the channel and the betterment of the world, and really look at that we're all better together, and to collaborate as a currency, because there's enough business out there for everyone. And so that's kind of what I'm passionate about within our industry. Is that if we can do some things that could maybe stimulate another company saying, hey, we don't just have to do it this way, then I would be very prideful and very, humbled by that. So.
Mm-hmm. So how have you taken that philosophy of innovation and operationalized it, really kind of build it into the DNA of the culture, of the practices of the company? Do you have any examples of how you've done that, whether it's with the business model or with the product strategy? How have you been able to ingrain that into the DNA?
Yeah, I mean, you could say from top down. I mean, even internal management philosophy. We create a very flexible atmosphere that we want real collaboration and real buy-in. I believe that if you sell someone into direct sales, they're going to be a shorter. They're not going to have as big of a long tail as a distributor, as someone that you can get to buy into what it is that you're doing and why you're doing it, not just from a product perspective, right? And so I think even internally, one of the things that our staff, we have a very lean personnel, like a lean ship, but they're mighty, and I'm super appreciative they can carry a ton of weight, because I think that we get a lot of buy-in for what it is that we're doing, and I think that's really important. That the innovation, I think, is, I tell them to try to discourage people from working for us, like go out and like literally scare them to death. And I don't know if you know this, Amazon, actually, they have like a 90-day out. So after 90 days, some of their top employees, they call in and they give them one-time severance offer of a lump sum of money of $10,000 or $20,000 cash that they'll pay them if they want it to leave. And if they take it, it's a lot of money, but they say it saves them more than that in headaches, right? And Amazon, to me, is a pretty innovative company, but that's where the buy-in comes in. So from product standpoint, we look to, we attempt to do things that in the past, I have seen companies that they have a good product and they quit evolving that great product, right? There's a book called Play Bigger I got 5 or 6 years ago. I used to do a lot of training on it, but it talks about being a category king. And a lot of people misrepresent or misunderstand that. But if you have something that's really great and you're the pioneer of it, and you become the category king, so to speak, or you become the authority in that space, so many companies, they cannibalize themselves because they go try to find that other hero product, right? Instead of building an ecosystem around what that core competency is. But a lot of people, they become great with that. Then they try to say, well, how much more margin can we get off this product that we did? But that's not innovation from my perspective. So we've kind of done the opposite. And the book will tell you, double down on what you're great at, make it better. Keep yourself as the authority. But the only way to do that is do more R&D, do more development. So like the cost of goods of our product today is more than it was when we first started. And when we started, there was no supply of our raw ingredients. There just wasn't. We created the demand and the supply. So one of the things that we've always pushed from a product development standpoint is two prongs. It's like, how do we maintain that as being the best and the authority? Well, we have to make that a focus. We can't become complacent on where we're at, where I think a lot of companies in the past, both traditional and in direct sales, they want to figure out how to make just more margin off that product, right? So, okay, well, with more volume, we can cut it here, here, and here. So I would think that is a little bit of practicing. And then the other is, just the introduction of experiences with our product. We probably do, which this isn't a trade secret, we probably do more flavors of our product than any company out there. And we're constantly doing things that in traditional business, the norm. I mean, if you go through Starbucks, they have seasonal flavors. You can't wait till October to get what's the cinnamon spice or what's
pumpkin.
The one called?
The pumpkin latte, right?
Pumpkin latte. Everybody wants it, right? So, we didn't invent seasonal flavors. I mean, the biggest brands in the world do it, but customers want stimulation. They want new experiences. And then it also gives the ability to do a lot of creating conversations in the market. So, I mean, those would be a couple examples. I'm sure I could come up with
more.
Those
are amazing.
We're constantly, at sometimes we go into the conference room, boardroom, and you got to be very careful because we can go wide really fast with ideas and creativity, and that's kind of who we are, right? And sometimes when you do that, you get less execution. So sometimes we have so many incredible ideas that kind of fall on deaf ears because there's too many at the same time. But my point being is I would rather have 27 balls in the air like that we're juggling for innovation and experimenting, and have half of them dropped and just try to hold the same 2 balls up perfectly. And we're not going to be perfect. That's something that we communicate with. We treat every, I believe one of my goals, and this is very hard to do, is and we say it all the time, is this is our company. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're a promoter or your customer service or your top executive, everyone plays a role, and not one role is more important than the other. That's part of teamwork, right? So inherently, a lot of times in our industry, I've always seen people say, well, the company in the field. Well, sure, yeah, that's a true definition. But when you say it and how you hear it in context, it's confrontational by nature, right? And so one of the things that we try to really do is include them into the process of what we're doing. So they also we're building an education or an understanding of how we're running the company, because you can't dictate to a volunteer army. They have to feel like they're a part of that. And that's not just a manipulation. We make them a part of that. I mean, we do not run any promotion without, running it by, we have a whole process of, anyone that's kind of in our circle of champions. They all have an awareness of it. Now, sometimes we have to make a tough decision, but we don't surprise them or blindside them by any stretch of the imagination. And there's been times where I think something's great and they're like, we don't think it'll work. Well, they're the ones that are beating on doors. So we're like, okay, well, we'll table it. We'll revisit it, so, and I think that to me is just bringing value to people in a part of what they're doing, because so many people's lives are affected by any decision that is made internally from ops, marketing, or whatever. And I think just to constantly be aware of that is an innovative approach in itself.
It really is. Yeah. And I love your practice and philosophy of creating value with the products you have, with enhancing and evolving, that kind of more incremental innovation, instead of looking for, some completely new category, completely new product line, but really kind of drilling deep and focusing on the products you have, and creating more and more value and excitement. I think too often, many of us in direct selling run to whatever that new, shiny product is, or, that new category. And it ultimately ends up diluting our brand, diluting our positioning. And then, at the end of the day, people are like, what does your brand even stand for? Who are you? And it really kind of throws a wrench into where we have permission to go and extend in the future. So again, I love the philosophy, especially in those, early 3 to 5 to 7 years of drilling deep and instead of going wide. So kudos to your team on that discipline.
Yeah, and then you build an ecosystem around that hero product, or whatever you're the category king around. You build the support ecosystem around it. And there's a lot of companies that have done that unbelievable, right? But for instance, what you just said, there's a book I got 12 years ago, I think it was. I don't know the time frame now, 12, 13 years ago, called Blue Ocean Strategy. A lot of people use it today.
Yeah, great book.
They manipulate it. They don't really read it. And I'm going, that's not what the book talks about. But the things that I would encourage our channel and, is we create too much red ocean within our own channel. And how our channel really stands out for the value it can truly give to the end consumer and real entrepreneurs is for us to go into the blue oceans instead of fighting, and trying to compete with all the same product, just spinning it is, shift and challenge ourselves to put yourself on a limb to go into that blue ocean to where, creating something that hasn't been done, or something that can really bring value, and focus on the value rather than the price point, right? I think for me, I just had a conversation with a top executive for a Silicon Valley company. They're not in our channel at all. And one of the things we started talking about was price sensitivity in the market and how people enter the market. And I understand that there's always different marketing philosophies and strategies. For me, I think that people want something that works first rather than paying something inexpensive for something that doesn't work. So, I always say that I'm not worried about what everyone else is doing. What I'm focused on is giving people the experience that they're looking for, because I know for an absolute fact that coffee's 25 cents at Denny's, but it's $5 at Starbucks. So, and the people that are buying Starbucks are the same audience that's buying it from Denny's. My point by saying that is that people want real value that gives them an experience, that gives them an association, gives them a feeling, and gives them results. And as long as you can deliver that value, the price will not matter unless you're caught up with fighting with competition in other companies. That's the red ocean that book talks about. And so that's something so easy that we've had to catch ourselves a couple times almost sliding over to that philosophy instead of keeping our North Star in place.
Oh, I love that. Talk to me a little bit about community-based marketing. It's something that you talk a lot about. Can you explain it for all of us and talk a little bit about the similarities and maybe the differences between, what you feel community-based marketing is and direct selling kind of more traditionally?
I'd love to. And keep in mind, these are just my opinions. It's not, I understand my opinion is just one of many. So when I speak, sometimes I'm saying things that are just from my heart. I'm not saying anything to offend anyone or to create anything, but direct selling for me has words have meaning. And, it's called transitional language, and people transition their emotions and they give words meaning based on their past experiences. And, if you just say the word sale in front of a group of 1,000 people, you just turned half of them off. Half of people don't want to sell. They had a bad experience with being sold. They feel like, selling's the devil. Now half of them probably love to sell, right? And in today's world, obviously everyone is selling something, right? But for me, it's about taking out that association that might stop someone. The person's even selling you of why they don't want to do it. They're selling, but again, it's word association. And for me, the sale, from an operations and business perspective, you have to have it to create a profit, to sustain. I get that. However, it's like the chicken and the egg, because to me, the sale, I don't ever want to be the number one value proposition of our company. The number one value to me is the goodwill that happens when you bring different temperaments, talents, and convictions together, and you focus them for one singular purpose. So you have people from all walks of life, but they're bought in emotionally to something to where they can leave an impact. It's greater than the transaction. So for me, community-based marketing represents a framework of focusing on everything that a community can identify for. And, I had a super wealthy individual I look up to a lot. He's had a lot of massive success. He's also super happy. But one of the things that he talks about a lot is, in order to build something to last today is different than building something to last starting in the 80s or the 90s, right? And everything in today's world has to be associated with a raving fan. A raving fan can turn into a community. More and more Fortune 500, Global 2000 companies are looking for more ways to create that bridge or create more of a real connection, right? Back 10 years ago, there was this whole influencer model. People were trying to hire these. Some people are still doing it. It was effective for a little while, but then people's bullshit radar is higher than it ever is before, right? So then people go, well, wait a minute, do they really like that product, or are they just a paid endorser? So you have kind of this polarization happening in the marketplace. At the same time, we're creating a community. And so community to me is representation of giving people a platform to where, when you think of community, what are the emotional feelings that you think of? Family, safety, trust, and the community is made up of not just top achievers. One of the innovative things we do is recognition. Well, that's not innovative, Brian. That's been done in our industry for 50 years. Right. And mostly it's always done for achievers, and that's important. Everyone has to see Roger Bannister run the 4-minute mile. But for us, a community is about recognizing everything, the highs, the lows, the dog dying, the family passing, someone that just gets their first 2 customers and they've been in 6 months, someone that's going through a really tough time and their business is on the slide. How do you recognize that? Because, that to me is what people want to be a part of something that's bigger than they are. But when you can recognize that everyone has their place and every spoke in the wheel is just as important as the person making $1 million a year with you. And I think sometimes we get so focused on this person making $1 million a year, we forget how many people we lose out the back door because we don't keep them connected. And they're at a different trajectory in a community, they might want something different out of it. They're in a different trajectory of their growth. They might not ever want to be the big income earner, but 90%, and these are made up numbers, but this is my gut feel.
Most of statistics are, so go ahead.
In the industry, 90% of everyone's audience is doing a little bit. 90% of it. So how do you keep that little bit just engaged? And how do you appreciate them as much as you appreciate, the person making $1 million a year? They've just figured out how to manage 90% of their organization doing a little bit at a better level than someone else, maybe, if that makes sense to you. And so to me, that's 100%. What community is about. There's a DNA that we have around community that we teach. We throw it out first and foremost, but we also practice what we preach. And I think that's very important. We're not perfect. We make a lot of mistakes. We're not afraid to make those mistakes, but we try to eat our own cooking. And, so community-based marketing to me is re-identifying what is valuable in today's marketplace. So if you want to build something to last, you got to be able to harness the emotional connection that your raving fans, your promoters, your distributors, and even your audience, because there's so many people that might be voyeuring your brand that aren't even a customer yet, right? So how are you doing things to create local involvement to see good that you're doing to the world? And when you do that, you all of a sudden create this community around your brand. So now all of a sudden you're a brand company, a lifestyle brand that means more to the person that says, yeah, I'm a part of that. Or and they use words like our or we, and that's super important to us. So that to me is what I identify with community. The transaction isn't more important than the person. And I'm not saying that it is. I'm saying from a language standpoint, community makes someone feel a little bit different level of connection. Community-based marketing. Oh, we market community first, sales later. So it's not transactional based, because transaction is very fleeting. So if you take a look at any major brand in the world today, they're either fostered it unconsciously or just by circumstance, which sometimes is the best way to do it, or they do it very intentionally today. Star Wars is a transitional brand. They have a community that supports their product no matter what gets released onto the Disney Channel, no matter what theme park opens up, no matter what new t-shirt comes out. They are diehards for the brand, and they have been because of an experience that they have attached to through the years, right? And so for us to do that, there's also great companies that have products. You take a look at Nike, transitional brand. People have an experience and an association of what Nike represents to them. They're not associating it with the selling that Phil Knight used to do, selling rubber-soled shoes in the back of his car. They associate it with Just Do It or LeBron James or that commercial that resonated with them. And so it's a constant being able to find something that can last in people's gut based on an experience. And that's inspiration, right? And so that's kind of what we want to do with not just our channel, but our brand, but circle that around the community more. And so that's why we use that language. And that's, to me, what we represent is that feel for, a lasting brand by giving them experiences, not just selling them product. Now, the product has to be congruent to giving them an experience too. I truly believe that. So it kind of comes full circle. But, the last thing that I think, and we're constantly pushing right now to how do we create more bridge to our end consumer and to our raving fans. And what's amazing is seeing the reciprocation that, someone that might not ever promote or refer anyone to our company or brand, how much they want to be involved, how much they love knowing about the new product, or how much they want to do a video contest. We have customers and fans participating in events that we do that don't just have a financial incentive to it.
I love that. I think that's really powerful, to focus on kind of that emotional connection and those emotional interactions over the transactional interactions, knowing that those transactions, the transactional interactions are going to happen. They're going to be a result of that emotional connection. That community-based approach, I think, is really, really powerful. So earlier in our conversation, you mentioned something that I want to circle back to. You talked about when you were starting Prüvit, feeling a little bit of the imposter syndrome. And I think that all of us have felt that at times, and especially on, an entrepreneurial journey. It's going to be filled with ups and downs. You're someone that's been a really successful entrepreneur from an athletic standpoint. You've competed at a really high level, and it's interesting that even you admitted that at times you felt that imposter syndrome. So what have you done to kind of overcome that at times? And I recently read an article on kind of the imposter syndrome, and it talked about how about 70% of people kind of experience this. And one of the counterintuitive dynamics that the article pointed out is that it's often experienced by those that are very driven, that are high achievers. And it's because they're always pushing themselves kind of into the unknown. They're doing things that they haven't done before. And so there's not always that confidence there. There has to be a little bit of that leap of faith. But in the early days of Prüvit, and again, in building what's become one of the more successful, entrance into the channel in a long time, how did you kind of recognize and overcome that imposter syndrome?
That's a great question. And something that's come up a lot recently as well. And to be completely transparent, I think that it's not something that I've just dealt with and it goes away. I think that is a constant, especially if, like you said, if you're pushing yourself to go to another level, to extend, to push, I think it's human behavior. I think it's, conscious behavior that, am I enough? Can I do this? Can I carry the weight? And, for me, I think that I've been very fortunate to wire myself to, number one, I know that playing a team sport growing up, you're only as good as your team. So, to enlist people that I know that I can believe and count on, that gives me courage and strength. And then it makes me work harder not to let them down. And I know I have some of it. I think also to recognize what got me here. I'm constantly I don't ever want to buy into my own bullshit, for lack of a better term is, I truly believe that success can crush you. And I think that, some of the past experiences that I've gone through, the ups and the downs, and, I don't think it's a failure if you keep moving forward and you learn from it. However, I don't think that I was ready at that time in my life to carry that weight, right? Whether it was perspective, model of the world, experience, tactical, so for me, to overcome that and constantly overcoming it is really, it's kind of a two-edged sword, pushing myself to the next level. Don't get complacent where I am, pushing myself to the next level, and also believing in other people. And I think that that's a huge tool, if you've gotten to a certain level anywhere in life, like wherever you're at, you've succeeded. We've all gotten there because of belief in ourselves and other people believing in us. And so, just keep the simple things in front of you, and the reminder of all you can do is all you can do. And I think that's the biggest thing with me is just asking yourself, are you doing all you can do? And that's all you can do, because what's the worst thing that can happen? And from a cynical standpoint, what's the worst thing that can happen? Like the absolute worst thing. And look at the worst thing, and you're not 6 feet under, you're going to be okay. Right. And so it's something that I believe, I believe it not only happens with executives. I think it's also a self-sabotaging or a thermostat mechanism, even for promoters. Like we've seen it happen. I've always said this with, what's the difference in someone making $100,000 a month and $10,000 a month? And then when someone's making $100,000 a month, why don't they go ahead to generate $1 million a month off commissions? Well, usually you can call it the imposter syndrome or something different that basically has them tap out, or they don't approach it the same way they approached in that first $100,000 commission, right? But if they did the exact same thing over again 10 times, they would get there because, math is math. And, but I think a lot of times it's a self-sabotaging mechanism to keep us from being rejected or the fear of failing. So we just don't move forward. And I think that's, I think the awareness, number one, is 95% of it. Once you become aware of it, then you realize, then it's a lot easier to kind of move through it. And, but that happens to me to this day. I mean, we're working on something really, really big that we're really excited about. And I mean, those thoughts have come through my mind. Now I exit them out, but it's that conversation, internal dialogue of, are you enough? Am I enough? And so that takes a lot of practice. And I think it's also, I think it's good to move through that sometimes through your journey, because I think it can also keep you grounded from an empathetic standpoint and from an awareness standpoint of where you came from. And you're the greatest, entrepreneurs in the world experience the same thing that you and I experience. I mean, they do. Sure. It's like butterflies before a game. Michael Jordan used to always get butterflies before every game. Sometimes he would go in, or Kobe Bryant, and they would shoot and break a sweat 2 hours before the game. That was their obsession with not wanting to let down and to make sure that they were enough for that game, right? To live up to their press clipping. So it became this fuel to raise their greatness and to level up. But when the ball was tipped, they had butterflies. Now, because of repetition and because of them staying 2 hours earlier or 2 hours later, the butterflies would go away a lot quicker because that certainty would set in because of just repetition. And so, I think the biggest thing is just use fear as your friend. Don't be afraid to fail and be aware of it. I think it's okay to be aware of it. I think that so many people walk through this path, whether it's being an executive or an entrepreneur or whatever path of life, that they have to be perfect instead of really trusting their own gut and intuition and giving themselves the freedom to be themselves. Regardless of how that looks, like you have to be yourself. And in that, I think there's a lot of liberation, because it's like you said, you don't have to operate by a template today. And a template's not going to make you happy. So I think the first and foremost thing is to realize that I might not do it the same way you do it, right? Or the next guy does it, but our outcomes, but I might get there, right? Doing it my way, but you gotta find out what cheeseburger you like. You can't just eat the mentor's cheeseburger or your mom's cheeseburger. You got to find the recipe you like the best. And a lot of people, I don't think take time to do that. So I believe our industry is shifting that way, by the way. I don't believe that it's my way or the highway. This system works and that system doesn't. The philosophy of a system gives people the ability to buy in. But I'm a big believer sales scripts don't work, because if you give someone a sales script, you're basically training them to use somebody else's words. To me, you got to give them a framework of the pathway you want to move someone through, rapport, value proposition, connection, call to action. I'm using that as a loose example. So if you do that, then what's that bridge? Well, the bridge that's going to connect it is the authenticity. When someone can actually relate to you and they feel you, that comes with congruency, not from selling. You might be able to get a transaction from selling, but you might not ever get a lifelong customer, or you might not get someone volunteering. And I feel like an executive in the business.
Absolutely. And I think that awareness is so important, especially around kind of that imposter syndrome, or those times that we don't feel as confident as others. Just knowing that everyone's going to experience it, that even the most successful entrepreneurs have felt that you're not the only one, I think can add a lot of comfort and kind of build up that courage, that well or reservoir of courage again. So shifting into the last few questions. So you've spoken about advice that you've gotten from your father. So I'm shifting here from your role as a founder and CEO to a father. You've got the right t-shirt on today for this question. So your dad gave you some advice every day that really seemed to have an impact on you. Can you tell us a little bit about that? And then how you as a father have continued that with your 3 kids? You knew that had a lasting impression on you as a child. What are you doing for your kids to kind of make a similar impression?
No, that's a great question. And I had a great example, both my mother and my father. Like I said, I was privileged, right? Always dream big. But my dad, it was funny. I was kind of on the speaking circuit a couple of years ago, and I'm not going to say his name, but super famous speaker that a lot of people would know came up to me. We started talking about kids, and he was asking me, so what do you think the most important quality that you can live, like as a role, your dad, what is your role as a dad? And what's the most important thing you can leave behind your kids? And man, I was put on the spot. So I was like, oh God, how do I, because I looked up to this guy, super successful. He's a, guru, I guess, so to speak. And I didn't really know how to answer that. And I said, I think that to give them love, to know that they're loved no matter what. And he goes, well, that's a good answer. But see, let me redirect it a little bit. He said, I believe that our role as a father is to teach our kids to fend for themselves, and I hope and pray that I can have success in doing that. My dad did. And one of the lasting philosophies that I've kind of carried or paid it forward, he would drop me off for school every day. That's one of my joys in life, by the way. I get to drop my kids off for school, and I love it. I've done it their entire lives, no matter what I'm doing. And every time he dropped me off for school, he wrote me a card even when I was in college. He'd always say, all right, Tiger, go get him. But he would say, hey, be positive and confident in all you do. Be positive and confident. Like, so that always be positive and confident in all you do. And he passed last year. I actually got his handwriting tattooed on me just to remind me of that. And it's kind of like what you said with the imposter syndrome is you can't change some things that are going to happen in your life. You can't control them, but you can control your outlook on them, how you see them, and your courage to get through them. And that courage comes from confidence. And so I think that he did an incredible job of grooming me for the fight. Like if you go after something that's worth having, that's living in, people are going to try to stop you. You're going to deal with stuff. You're going to go through heartache. You're going to go through turmoil, and you're going to go through your own mistakes and your own learning. But if you can really stay grounded, to just be positive on any situation and be confident, you can get through it. I think that to me is the fuel. So, obviously I share that with my kids, and it's something that's resonated with me since he was. But I think that that's important for everyone. Like anybody, it doesn't matter. We're all humans. Doesn't matter where we're from. Doesn't matter where in the world we're listening to this from. It doesn't matter how much money you make or don't make, or how much power you have, or your title in your company. It doesn't matter. We're all humans, and we all have the same needs. And, I think that if we can just always remember that we are enough, be confident in the direction you're going, and no matter the things that can happen to you, if you can be positive, on the other side of it's a lesson. On the other side of it is growth. And so that's stayed with me to this day.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. So last two questions. What keeps you up at night?
Oh man. That's a lot of stuff. No, I mean, if you're asking me, some of the things that right now where I'm at in my life, I'm going through a season, kind of coming out of a season of my life. And, I would say you touched on the very first thing is, it's one thing when you can't control things in your life, but then when you have kids, and if you have kids, what I'm talking about, that probably keeps me up at night is like,
Sure.
All you can do is all you can do. Remind myself of that, but making sure that I'm there for them and I'm a good father and I'm making the right decisions and I'm keeping their well-being in place and giving them the ability to fend for themselves. That really, that's something that's just, for me, it's taken a lot of courage is, in a look in the mirror of that's my primary goal and focus. And then I would say the second thing is not being done yet. I always say, people say, oh, you're successful. Well, first of all, it's not me. We have a team of people. I haven't done this by myself. I think I'm a spoke in the wheel. However, to me, it's a start. And, how far can we take this? How many people can we impact? What type of ripple effect can we leave behind? Where can we disrupt or break what's working to the point where it doesn't cannibalize, but it can actually stimulate another level of growth? And the reason that kind of keeps me up at night is because I don't want to be complacent. As I get older, I've always been very driven, and the happiest that I've ever been is when I'm striving for something. And so I just want to make sure that for me, I continue to be present, which this has been my biggest learning this year, is being still and being present and enjoying the moment with the ability to pursue and continue to move forward. Because if you don't pursue, that's momentum. Momentum is when you finish something or you complete a goal to start the new goal, you piggyback off that momentum. And, and so that's, to me, what keeps me up at night. And, today, the decisions that we make internally as a company, it doesn't just affect us. And I think that's the greatest sign of an entrepreneur is, remember, even as a promoter, the decisions you make, how you talk about other companies, how you promote your business, it affects other people. And so make a decision to go the high road, make the decision to go of value, not into the red ocean, because I believe that, a wise mentor of mine told me this a long time ago. He's like, you've never really an entrepreneur until you associate your decisions with other people's livelihoods and other people's lives. And I think that, that keeps me up at night is not being afraid to make the wrong decision, and there's not a right or wrong decision, but it's having the courage to make the decision and following through with the right intent, and intention matters. So But the biggest thing keeps me up at night is those little ones, and and doing the right thing, and how do you balance like being present all the time for them, which has always been one of my goals. It was one of my dad's goals, is being able to make every activity they do, but also showing them example of the hard work and the grind. Kevin Hart, I interviewed Kevin Hart not too long ago, and I'll sign off with this, and I thought it was the coolest thing, because I always talk about the it factor. Like, some people just have it. Well, what is it? It is it. You can't describe it, but how you get it is through your journey, is through experiencing the highs and the lows and the work and the blood, the sweat, the tears, the desires, the dreams. Going through it gives you it. It's something you can't describe. You cannot teach someone how to get their it. And I talk about that. I have for 20 years, right? You've met those people. They come in a room and you talk to them a little bit, and you're like, you don't know what it is about them, but man, they have it. You like them. And so it's funny. I was interviewing Kevin Hart, and he was talking about his sons having to ride a commercial flight for the first time, because he's always flying them private. And he said, I had to stop him right there and be like, man, you all don't have it. Your dad has it, but I'm not going to let you go through life. You got to go find your it. Just because I have it doesn't mean you have it. And if you don't find your it, then you're not going to be happy. So like, you have to pay the price. You got to do these things. And so that's kind of in like my mind. We laughed about it off camera for hours, because there's so many similarities that, it's okay to feel pain. It's okay to experience the letdowns. That's what gives you your melodies and your zest of life. And so that would be my encouragement to everyone is find your it and continue to build on that it. And so that's, that would probably be my closing remarks for my kids too, is making sure that they have a clear path to be able to develop their own it.
That's so great. So powerful, especially for the kids. I was going to ask you what gets you out of bed in the morning, but I think you just answered it. And so I think that's a beautiful note to close.
That's the crazy thing about it, right?
It's the flip side, right?
And here's the thing. So this is my new goal. And Mel Robbins, we had her speak at one of our events like 4 years ago.
She's great.
And she's great. Now she's, you all knew her and introduced us to her, but now she's blowing up. But I remember she said, hey, look, put your phone away at night and don't turn it on for the first 2 hours of the morning. Like, get your morning, regimen done. I was like, man, that's great advice. Lasts about 1 day for me, right? And so that's kind of my new goal, is like, what wakes me up in the morning is the same thing that keeps me up at night. But if I get started down that rabbit hole too much, I don't control my outcomes for the day. I'm now responding to everyone else's outcomes. And so I'm putting it out there, because the more I put out, so I'm going to I'm going to start the regimen of not reacting to this first thing in the morning. So
I love that approach. I need to give that a try as well.
I mean, listen, you're talking about a muscle that takes discipline. It's crazy.
It's so tough.
I interviewed Ryan Holiday yesterday, and that's why it came back up in my brain, because
I love Ryan.
Yeah, love Ryan. Talked about it. Oh, he was awesome. And he talked about it, and I was like, all right, this is a sign. Like, I need to do it. Mel was the first person that said it, and then he was the second. So he does it. Like, he incorporated that during COVID, and he said it's just completely shifted actually his production when he does start getting focused.
I actually thought about Ryan and Stoicism when you mentioned kind of on the imposter syndrome conversation, where you said, like, what's the worst that can happen? That's one of the tenets and practices of Stoicism is to literally kind of imagine and practice the worst case scenario, so that if you're ever hit by it, you're armed, you're prepared, what that feels like, you know what that worst case scenario looks like, so that you can overcome it. But I'm jealous you got to interview Ryan, but I got to interview Brian today. So my day's been awesome. So
I don't know about that. I hope I gave some value
Thank you so much for being so candid, for these amazing insights, for even these emotional dynamics and aspects that you shared have been really helpful, really amazing, have given me something to go back and think on and to try to sharpen my sword in some areas as well. So thank you for sharing. I know everyone's going to love it. Appreciate getting to know you better, and look forward to seeing you at events in the future.